John Wick 5 has officially been announced during a Lionsgate earnings call, and with this news coming, there are some other smaller details that I wanted to discuss surrounding the eventual sequel or prequel to Chapter 4. This includes my brief theories for a fifth film, and also whether I think it's actually a good idea. Before I get into it though, if you want to see more videos on the future John Wick films and spin-offs, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into the announcement of a John Wick 5. So while it's currently known that John Wick was not alive by the end of Chapter 4, the series as a whole is ready to move into a new gear of spin-offs and prequels featuring characters we know and also new characters too. However, in the time since the fourth movie, director Chad Stahelski had hinted that the series would continue in multiple interviews. And now yesterday, during Lionsgate's Q4 earnings call, the Motion Picture Group chairman Joe Drake confirmed that another John Wick film is in early development, and alongside this, he confirmed that there are plans to expand the Wick saga into spin-offs, even more television series, and also video games. Drake said, "We're now moving across that franchise, not just in the AAA video game space, but looking at what the regular cadence of spin-offs, television, really growing that universe so that there is a steady cadence of a franchise, that there's clear appetite by the audience." What is official is that, as you know, Ballerina is the first spin-off that comes out next year. We're in development on 3 others, including John Wick 5 and including television series. The Continental will be airing soon, and so we're building out the world, and when that 5th movie comes, it will be organic, it will be organically grown out of how we're starting to tell those stories. But you can rely on a regular cadence of John Wick. Now, we know that John Wick Chapter 4 had blown away audiences with its action, and it also smashed box office records for the series, with the main character finally letting go of his vengeance against the High Table. Given the huge success of Chapter 4, it's understandable that any studio would want to greenlight another film. But when it comes to the story, is that really the greatest of ideas? Before I get into my conflicting thoughts on this, let's first discuss the current theories over what direction they could take with a John Wick 5. So at the end of Chapter 4, following John's elaborate plan to kill the High Table's marquis with his final bullet, we watch him collapse on the stairs of the Sacré-Cœur, dying and also dreaming of his dead wife Helen. Wick had stated that he'd like his gravestone to say nothing more than John Wick loving husband, and we cut to that very image with Winston and the Bowery King visiting John's gravesite. The Bowery King wonders whether Wick is currently in heaven or hell, and Winston's response was, "Who knows?" followed by a slight smirk on his face and Wick's pitbull running off to look at someone or something in the distance. This is of course just speculation, because to a good chunk of the audience, this also seems like a fitting end for John Wick's story, one that actually isn't setting up anything to come with the main character. But there are a few other things that fans noted which could suggest that this actually isn't the full end to this story. On top of the main ending hints, it was spotted by some fans that Winston calls John's son in Russian, and that he also has a cross tattoo on his arm, leading to the theories that John could either be his son-in-law, or that Winston was at some point a part of the Ruska Roma, John's previous family, who he once again becomes connected to in Chapter 4. There were also speculations years ago that Winston might actually be Helen's father, and John being seen as his son-in-law. Hence the smirk at the end, Winston's response, and the dog looking at something in the distance. Of course, these are just theories, and Chad Stahelski and those involved with the Wick films may have ended it like that to intentionally bring up these building questions. When I watched the film and did my breakdown, I honestly didn't catch some of these crazy links that people are bringing up, and I thought it was quite a fitting end for the story of John Wick. How do you go bigger than what we saw saw and take the story in an interesting direction after making a lot of the audience believe that that was the end. It could become too much of a parody in the sense of something like Fast and Furious, where we get more insane action and the franchise becomes driven more by money than it is the storytelling. Again though, setting up a John Wick 5 may have all been intentional, and for all we know, the next film could be either a final nail in the Wick story, or it might even be a prequel or set in a different time before. But to make the audience really care about Wick and the central story at play, I think it only makes sense that this will be set after the events of Chapter 4, as the other projects that are on the horizon are the ones that are filling in the gaps. With the Lionsgate CEO hinting that the upcoming projects will set up a John Wick 5, it does make me think even more that this is going to be set after the events of Chapter 4. So with that all in mind and having mixed thoughts towards it, my only theory right now is that these connections to Winston and the smirk he delivers at the end of the film is actually the truth in what's going on. If I was to have an early guess, it would be that John's death is covered up by Winston so that the High Table or anyone else who was originally after him can't affect him anymore. And then in a fifth film, you would think that someone else or other main High Table members dig up something that leads back to John, or in reverse, John finds something out that makes him come out of hiding and take a final stand against the rest of the table. Now this is just throwing stuff at the wall because I honestly have no idea what way they are going to take this, and I think it will probably be more clear after we've seen both the Continental and that ballerina spin-off film. But when it comes to whether John Wick 5 is actually a good idea, like I said before, I personally thought the ending to Chapter 4 was a perfect goodbye for that main character. It had meaning in that John had finally joined his wife, and then it also leaves us with questions like whether he went to heaven or hell, which I think is more effective by being unanswered. Even the slight hope that John Wick isn't dead, to me feels more effective in the way they ended Chapter 4, rather than doing a fifth movie and going again even after having such a great ending. It reminded me a bit of the ending to The Dark Knight Rises, where the subtle ambiguity surrounding Bruce Wayne worked as a perfect ending rather than one which would create another film, in turn killing that conclusive storytelling power. They left it alone, and to me that ending gets even better on rewatch because when watching it as a trilogy, it answers the story of Batman becoming a heroic symbol in death, or if he's still alive, he can now have more peace in the future. So with a John Wick 5, I think it would take an ending comparable to that, and in turn, it could become quite silly. Look, I do think that if Chad Stahelski and the creators have a great story plan to pull off another John Wick, and if the narrative takes an interesting turn that we as the audience can really connect to, then I'm sure it could turn out great. But man, after watching Chapter 4, I honestly thought that ending was a perfect metaphorical summary of John Wick's story, and I struggle to see how they can make a Chapter 5 work after that ending. I guess we'll just have to see how the next few projects lead into a fifth film, and to be fair, this does become especially true when we consider what Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski have said about the upcoming spin-offs in multiple interviews. Last year, during an event in Brazil, Keanu Reeves said that Ballerina is set in the time period between John Wick 3 and Chapter 4, and director Chad Stahelski confirmed that the events of that film will take place within that 6-month window between both films. It was also confirmed that Reeves is returning to play Wick in Ballerina, and that his role is apparently much more than just a small cameo. We also know that both Ian McShane and the late great Laurence Reddick will reprise their roles in that film too. And on top of the Ballerina film, which is releasing in 2024, we've got a prequel series coming this year with that previously announced Continental show, which will follow a young Winston in a grimy 1970s New York. With Motion Picture Group Chairman Joe Drake saying in his earnings call yesterday that these spin-off and prequel projects will set the landscape for a John Wick 5, then when it comes to the story and whether this is a good idea, we will apparently only know after we've seen those projects. It's probably going to be a while before we see a John Wick 5 anyway, as we need to get through both the Continental in 2023 and the Ballerina film in 2024, so I would guess at the earliest we'd likely see the film between 2025 and 2026. We'll just have to see which route they go, and hopefully a John Wick 5 can put my concerns to bed surrounding whether it is a good idea for the story. But that was my video discussing the confirmation of John Wick 5. With it now in early development and Chapter 4 opening up many possibilities for the extension of this world beyond John Wick, it's going to be interesting to see what route they go in by the time we see that next main feature. Again, I loved Chapter 4 and I do have faith in the filmmaker and people involved to make another great film, but at the same time, I'm still cautious over whether this is actually the right move, especially as I felt that the last film had a perfect ending for John Wick. We'll have to see, but at the moment it seems that Lionsgate are going full steam ahead with a 5th John Wick film. But let me know down below in the comment section what your thoughts are on the announcement of a John Wick 5, and if you would want to see it, what are your theories on where this story could go? For more videos and news surrounding the John Wick saga, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.